Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Knights Report presented by Enterprise, your weekly or a couple of times a week check-in with the world of the BGK as we bring you this show from parts scattered around southern Nevada and across the Midwest. Darren Millard here in Summerlin, joined by Stormy Bonatoni, who is also in downtown Summerlin. Dan Duva is just off the Strip, and Mike McKenna in St. Louis. Start with you, Stormy. Just how are things?
Good. Yeah, trucking along. As you guys know, it's a little hard not to go stir crazy at home so much. But no, good overall. Keeping busy, obviously, with work and watching a lot of Netflix, reading a lot, doing some yoga on my kitchen floor. The mat's down yonder. But just getting along. How about you guys?
Hold on. You have the cleanest kitchen I've ever
when you don't cook often, right? But you've been doing a lot of that, though, haven't you, Stormy?
Yes, I've been cooking now. Lots of frozen pizza.
Frozen pizza? Oh, come on.
No, I've been cooking some other stuff. I said I baked banana bread the other day. I've been trying to make some smoothies, make some salads. I'm doing better. But I'm a big snacker, so I've been.
I've
been working out every day, and I'm going to gain 1,000 pounds because I snack all day.
Well, I'm going to do that too because I'm going to try to make banana bread myself today, Stormy. And I've never baked banana bread in my life. I don't know how it's going to turn out, so I appreciate your tips. But I will tell you, and I am no cook, I am no chef. But last week, and I talked about this on the podcast, I think, with Gary, Shane, and Dave. I made Arctic char with caramelized onions and oven-roasted tomatoes. It's one of the 3 best things I think I have ever cooked. I don't think I could do it again.
Impressive.
Right. I don't think I could do it again. Replication would not be a possibility, but it was good the first time.
It's pretty amazing given your limited resources there too, Dan. I've seen what you have in the kitchen. You got a pan, you got a spatula, and that's about it. So good work.
Thank you very much. Wish me luck on the banana bread too.
Yeah, let's see how it turns out. That's exciting.
You got some nice furniture, Dupes. Are you into antiques at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's leather-bound books, record player.
I said it smells of rich
over
mahogany.
my shoulder. Right. No, I did dust yesterday for you guys, just so you'd not see the place in shambles. Those binoculars over my shoulder are fake. They are decorative. However, the Bruce Springsteen records right here, those are real. They do play. And for people under the age of 20, music comes out of them, and they sound great.
I was going to go to the binoculars to see exactly what you're looking at because you are on the Strip.
That's right. If I were to turn you around, you'd have a great view of the mountains. But they tell me that would be bad for lighting purposes. You'd see the mountains and not so much of me. So decided to go with this. And I also got to point out the Syracuse University clock right there. That's another key piece.
Darren, are you in a video game chair?
I am. It
like
is
you can fly a jet.
Although we use it for writing. It's good for posture. That's the only reason why we have a video game chair.
Looks
and
very
it makes me feel like I'm
ergonomic.
on the Starship Enterprise.
Yeah.
With Patrick Stewart doing what he does.
That's right.
I feel like I should engage.
Engage.
Mike McKenna, what's it like in the Midwest?
Well, it's a little bit cooler, I'm sure, than it is in Vegas. It's weird. Let's face it. This whole thing is just weird right now. We've had several gatherings outside in the street where we maintained about 10 feet of distance from neighbors talking to them. So it's hard to describe it, as you know, but it's been interesting, especially with my oldest daughter's doing e-learning and she's in first grade. So it's given me a whole new respect, especially for what teachers do. This kid doesn't want to listen at all. So we're doing our best with that. And when you have a 4-year-old interjecting into everything that the 7-year-old's doing, it gets a little hairy, but otherwise just doing our best. We're cooking a lot. Having some family time, doing movie nights. Last night we watched Oliver and Company, so we're still in the Disney phase. And yeah, just plugging through everything and excited for hockey again, though.
Stormy, you're doing a lot of working out because the BGK Fit Challenge and as well as the book club. So give me an idea of the game by Ken Dryden and what your first impressions are with the BGK book club.
Well, you're joining me as well. You and Gary Lawless are both in on the book club, but it's been really good so far. I'm through chapter 2. I'm pretty sure that's pretty much on our schedule so far. So if you haven't checked out the BGK Book Club Facebook group, definitely do that. As we all read along, it's still very early. But I really enjoyed the book so far. We kind of were commenting back and forth on that Facebook page earlier today about some things that we had seen. And for me, like it takes place in the 70s, and I obviously wasn't around then. And so it's been cool for me to kind of like read through certain things and then go look it up and go see what these people looked like and improve my hockey knowledge a little bit. But my favorite part so far has been kind of a nonchalant kind of a thing, probably to most people reading the book, but about the pranks in the dress room has been my favorite thing. They share, Ken Dryden shares this story with, I think it was Guy Lapointe that did it, but it was a bowl of sour cream that he was passing off as ice cream with chocolate sauce on it, and got Ken to eat it. Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
We've seen
I
that
really
happen before. Yeah, those are like classic pranks. I've read the game too, so I know a bit of what you're referring to there. Cut laces, classic locker room stuff, getting your neighbor. Those are always funny.
Yeah, so fun. It's just been cool, I think, for somebody like me who's in the media, that yes, we're in the dress room and we see some of those things, but to get like the perspective of the athlete in those situations when there is no media around, no fans, no family, it's just guys being guys, having fun together and bonding. I think that's kind of a cool outlook.
And Dubes, Marc-Andre Fleury would be the equivalent to Guy Lapointe and the Montreal Canadiens back in the late 70s, the prankster.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, you know that especially when the Golden Knights are playing the Penguins, it was like, DEFCON 5 or whatever the appropriate term is. The Penguins are, Fleury ended up, surprising Sidney Crosby. Those pranks in Pittsburgh were legendary. And I think some of those in Las Vegas have only a few have, I think, made it to public knowledge. But there are several more. Mark is always scheming. And I can only imagine once hockey gets going again and he's around his teammates, he's going to have a huge backlog of pranks that right now he's thinking of.
Stormy, was there confirmation on your trip whether the shoe check was done by Marc-Andre or not?
It was not. It was not done by Marc-Andre. I know who it was done by. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus and who it really was. But I just, like, Fleury was so funny because we were on the dad's trip, and a lot of people were getting shoe checked. I didn't think that I was going to be because I'm so new, but it was my initiation.
The exact opposite.
You're the perfect target.
Yeah.
We're going to get the new gal. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And it's like my black boots too have tartar sauce all over them. And I go up to Flower because he looked so guilty. And I'm just like, just come on, be real, man. It was you, right? And then he's like, it was not me. But if it was me, I would not say it was me. I was like, all right. It was fine. That was
made
probably
him sound like
one of
a
my
French Dracula.
That was well, he was in that mode of, like, sneaky mode. Leave me alone.
What's a shoe check for those that don't know, Stormy?
So apparently this is like a big thing in hockey culture that this happens a lot. But
probably bigger in junior hockey than pro, but yeah, everybody's been through it.
Definitely in the ECHL too, just for the record.
I had no idea what this thing was, but you put like sauce or something gross on someone's shoe in like the gathering, and that person has to stand up and give a little speech.
Yeah, that's the key to it. The key is that the person doing the shoe check, generally they get underneath the table, crawl on the ground, and they'll use whether it's ketchup, barbecue sauce, tartar, I've seen butter. I mean, shoes have been ruined, but they do it so the person doesn't know that's going to happen to them.
The person who did it to me, I saw doing somersaults on the floor, had no idea that this had anything to do with me at the time, but was doing somersaults away from my table. And I'm like sitting there with Peter Stasny, like trying to play it cool.
So Mike, what is the appropriate reaction if you get shoe checked? What are you supposed to do?
Well, you get some of those people they'll see it happen and they'll try to play it off like nothing did, because when it happens, they start clinking glasses for everybody to check their shoes. That's how you check your shoes. And so the person who has happened to stands up, and generally they'll get a speech, they'll talk about it, they'll try to blame somebody sometimes, but that's what happens. And what's funny though, Stormy, you're talking about Peter Stastny being next to you. He might have been the foil. Somebody may have tipped him off, because generally you have to have a co-conspirator to these things, that the person sitting next to the person that's the target generally tries to draw their attention so that if they're not looking at their feet while it happens.
I'm pretty sure it was Alyssa Girardi because I didn't even look at my shoe as they're doing this for everybody to check their shoes. I didn't even look at mine. Didn't even think it was a possibility. Alyssa goes, Stormy, it's you.
So who was it? Why can't I don't know. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. Is it okay to say?
Hey, it's up to you. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I don't care.
Why not?
Well, it was.
I think, Stormy, everybody in the room knew except for you, so I don't think it's a secret.
Well, how about we all guess? Would it be worthy to guess if you're going to go for it?
Dan knows.
I know, so I am not going to spill the beans. No.
Darren, who would you think?
I'm going Shane.
Shane Knighty? No.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm going to go Jonathan Marchessault.
Shane pranks me all the time, but it was not him. It was a player.
Oh,
Marchie?
Was it Marchessault?
Wasn't
really? He's going to be mad at me for this.
So who was it?
It was Nick Holden.
Really?
Well done.
Yes.
6'3", 6'4" shoe checker. That's hard to do. Usually it's a smaller guy.
Doing one of those.
Good.
I guess it wasn't a somersault. It was more like, when you roll down the hill, like a log roll. Like that's kind of what he was doing away from our table.
He's clearly watched a lot of James Bond movies.
Very athletic.
It was very entertaining.
That's awesome. And that was on the dad's trip.
Yes. That was on the dad's trip when we were doing like wine country. We had a group dinner.
See, this is why you read the Game by Ken Dryden and join the BGK Book Club on Facebook, because it generates this kind of conversation, this kind of discussion, and boy, Ken Dryden goes all different places. But you're also doing the BGK Fit Challenge. We're putting out a new workout every day. I found that I was obviously out of shape because of how sore I am right now. Certainly after the first couple of days, you've done a great job.
No, I have not. Like, fortunately, they don't show the full 20 minutes of me actually trying to do these workouts because, like, I'm over here with my timer. It says 20 minutes, and I'll, like, pause it when I got to take a break. I'm like, all right, guys. It's a little harder than you anticipated if you haven't really done your due diligence in working out during the season. So, yes, I am with you, Darren. It's been a little tougher for me than I would have anticipated, but it is nice that you can go at your own pace if you are having trouble.
Darren, what I loved about yours was seeing your dogs enter the picture and get involved in it.
Oh, that was so cute. Your dogs, Shade's outfits. I'm the boring one, so I've got to up my game.
How'd you train him to do that? You must have had treats on you.
I'm upping my game on this second round too, and Gosher's going to join the second round as well. So Duva, if we go a third round, you're in.
I've been doing my burpees at home, so I've been getting ready. I'm not sure I'll be quite up to your level. But if called upon, I'm gearing up.
You got to make sure your gear looks as good as Shane's too. How about that 80s outfit he had on? Wow!
Oh my gosh, so good.
Really nice.
I was so happy when Stormy got to follow Shane instead of me, just from a pure optic standpoint. Wow!
Oh my gosh,
that's not a shot, but he's like, man, that dude can bring it when it comes to being in the workouts.
I'm so glad that I didn't get the decline push-ups as one of the ones I had to be an example for, because I was doing them embarrassed for myself. Like, it was the most pathetic thing ever. But
we got to get you some pump-up music, Stormy. We got to get you a playlist that's going to get you fired up. We got to talk to DJ Joe Green or somebody and get you the music to fire you up for your workouts.
Can I tell you, I'm putting Shane Knighty and Dave Gosher on notice right now because I texted them when this pause started that I needed a playlist because they always make fun of me about how I'm not in the know on the buses with all the jams.
That's all the 80s
they have
stuff
not
with Gosher.
delivered.
Yeah.
So we need to get on them. I need a playlist.
Let's go, Shane. Go, Gosh. Let's get into this. One of the big conversations that have taken place from every corner of the hockey world has been what happens when the pause stops. And just so you know, I spoke to Bill Daly of the National Hockey League today, and just for an update on what's happening. And the scenario is this: there's no real change. President Trump extended the social distancing for the end of April. So we're not going to be back by the end of April. But Bill Daly does say they're optimistic that they will be able to finish the season, even if it takes a couple of months. So keep that in mind. They're working with this multi-month situation. And don't just think it's after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks that there's going to be any decision. So they're still optimistic, even though it may take a couple of months. When it does come back, I want to know from the three of you, what is your format or what is your desire to see when the National Hockey League does resume? And we'll start with Mike, go to Dan, and Stormy, and I'll come at the end. What would you like to see on the resumption of play after the pause, Mike?
Well, the most important thing to me is that no matter what, it's got to be a 7-game final for the Stanley Cup. I think that's non-negotiable. You need to have the final 2 teams play a full series for it. Now, how do you get there? That's kind of the question for me, is that do you go to 3-game series? To me, that's too short. 3 out of 5. Now we're starting to make some more sense. So obviously with the hope coming from Bill Daly with that update that we're trying to make sure we get the regular season finished, that's a great hope to have. I'd love to see that happen because you want to see teams be able to play it out.
Sorry,
full 82.
I just wanted to clarify. He didn't say complete the regular season. He said he's optimistic.
Complete the season.
Complete the presentation of the Stanley Cup.
Perfect.
Good clarification.
That's good. Okay, so let's riff on that then. Let's say, just again, this is purely opinion. We're throwing spaghetti against the wall here. Let's say we need to go to playoffs right away. So I've looked at this a couple of different ways, and really there's 24 teams in the league that still had a shot at making playoffs when the pause happened. So for the 7 teams that wouldn't make the playoffs under my scenario, I'm really sorry. That's no fun. But are you really going to come back from playing hockey to potentially play 3 games and be done? That's asking a lot of the players on a lot of different levels. So I looked at it and took 24 teams. And I took it that the top 12 teams, the top essentially 7 teams from each conference would automatically be in, and there'd be some bye scenarios involved in this. So when you're setting up the brackets, you would have, the teams that were leading each division would have a bye in the first round and eventually would play against some teams that were playing their way in. So 20 to 24, those teams, or I take it back, 16 to 24 would have to play their way into a tournament of 16 essentially to be in the playoffs, the final 16. So you would have a scenario where 8 teams would play 1 game play-ins. So for instance, you would have Vancouver playing Chicago. You'd have Minnesota playing Arizona. One of those teams, or 2 of those teams, whoever wins, goes on to play Winnipeg and Nashville, who are waiting for them, who were the wild card teams as is. So what we essentially get down to is that the 8th seed on each conference has played their way in through a very quick 1-game elimination. And then we get to best of 5 series until the finals. And the reason I go best of 5 series is because it helps time frame wise if that's necessary. If it's not, hey, 7 games would be even better. But if you do a 5-game series, you can just go to each city once. You can play 2 in one city, play 3 in the other. And there's a catch to that, though, because the higher team seed is going to have to decide, do we want to start on the road or do we want to play at home? That's the catch. And it eliminates some of the travel and it lets these get over a little bit quicker. So, again, we're just being creative here. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but that's kind of my way to take it. You get down to 16 teams, 3 of 5, but there is play-in for the top 24 teams. So at least there's an opportunity for some of those teams that have been in the hunt to still have availability to play further.
And Mike, with regard to the number of games per series, we know still in the American Hockey League, the first round is best of 5. It is not a best of 7 series in the first round. In other words, to win a Calder Cup, it's 15 wins, whereas it's 16 in the National Hockey League for the Stanley Cup. There was a point in time about 35 years ago that for a brief stretch, it was 15 games, and then they upped it to 16. And, of course, for a great chunk of NHL history, it was 8, hence, Detroit, the Octopus, and everything else. And you go further back, and there were fewer teams, and it was fewer wins. But we're talking several decades now for the NHL, 16 wins to win a Stanley Cup. We know Ray Bourque and the Colorado Avalanche exit 16W in New Jersey off the Turnpike. Sorry, I will never forgive Ray Bourque for that. Anyway, the other thing, though, that comes to mind, and I don't want to throw cold water on your scenario, Mike, but here's my difficulty with the play-in. Does not the team participating in a play-in game then have an advantage over the other teams who've had a bye? We normally think of a bye as a good thing. But in this scenario, you're going to have teams who haven't played hockey for a couple of months going right into Stanley Cup playoff intensity. Yeah. Would they not have a disadvantage against the team who had a play-in?
And I've thought about that too, Dan, and that's kind of the sticking point with my scenario, and it's completely valid too. In some ways, trying to justify this, thinking that the play-in teams would have 2 extra games, kind of warm-up games, but you're still going into a best-of-5 series against a team that is the highest seed. But again, does that put the team at the highest seed at a disadvantage? That could be a scenario. So, do we face a time where those other teams play a couple of warm-up games to even out there? That starts to get real murky for me. And I think ultimately when it comes to this, there's no such thing as fair. There's kind of, it's going to be creative. It's going to be different. And I haven't yet found a way to make it equal for everybody.
No,
well,
Mike, I think like that's, well, see, that's I'm in agreement with Mike on this one because I very similarly have a play-in my format idea. And I know that that's something that the GMs, and we've heard plenty of times, I know from Gary Lawless saying that that's, an unfair advantage to the team that has had the better record so far. But like, you're 100% right. There is no fair thing. Like at the end of the day, no matter what ends up happening, somebody's going to be unhappy because there's not going to be an 82-game regular season and 7-game series throughout the playoffs. Like it's just not possible at this point. And so I think that you're right. Like it's not going to be fair no matter what we come up with, no matter how creative, what we try.
Well, let's see what Dan has.
Yeah, Dan, maybe you got it. I don't know.
And talking about fair too. Yeah, I mean, fair is cotton candy. It's what you get at the fair. I had an economics professor stand up the first day of class and say that, and it's true. In every negotiation, neither side's ever happy. That's kind of what we're facing here.
Yeah, I can't help but think about the economics for some of the franchises. If you're the Golden Knights, you're in a great position because you're in first place. No matter how you slice it, you're going to be in the playoffs. And they're in a position to have potentially multiple playoff series. You never know, of course. But from a financial standpoint, you would think that the Golden Knights get to play a heap load of games here if the NHL can resume. But on the other side, say you're the Detroit Red Wings. You have long since been eliminated from any playoff contention. Is there a window to play regular season games to try to get everybody to the same number? Then you're asking the Red Wings to come back and just the physical conditioning to play a couple of games to get everybody to say 73 or 74 games. And then to have another 2-month hiatus, silly. Not to mention if you're in Little Caesars Arena for the Red Wings home, I don't know if they still have their ice in, but I know a lot of arenas have taken their ice out. The cost of putting the ice back in, can that be made up with just 1 or 2 dates for meaningless games that probably aren't going to draw a lot of fans given the standings? So I think that there's something to be concerned about there. In other words, if you're going to play any regular season games, you've got to play all of them.
Yeah.
There's got to be enough time to get everybody to completion at 82. If it's any less than 82, I say just end the regular season where it is, which leads us to, do you decide the postseason teams by points or points percentage? Winnipeg right now has the number 1 wild card spot because they've got 80 points, 2 more than Nashville and Vancouver. Meanwhile, if you were to go the other way, you go by points percentage, well, then Nashville is in and Winnipeg would be out. I say Dems the breaks. The American Hockey League has a situation where different teams in a normal circumstance, regular year, play different numbers of games. Teams in the Pacific Division play fewer games than the other divisions in the NHL, so they figure out who gets in by points percentage. Then to me, it's not that much of a leap to just go by points percentage for the 16 clubs that get into the Stanley Cup playoffs. No warm-up games, no play-in games. I'm going with the teams that are getting into the playoffs based on the points percentage as we stand. And as you said, Mike, I'd like to see best of 7 in each of the 4 rounds, recognizing that could be difficult. But the other thought you bring up about the travel, we know in the Stanley Cup final in particular, to fly from Vegas to Washington, back to Vegas, they had to put extra days in there. I don't think you're going to be able to have those extra days. So that leads us to, do you have fewer transitions? You play the first few games in one city, the next few in the other city. Then you get into the economics of it, who wants the home dates. In the American League, it does happen sometimes where the higher seed gets to pick which games will be at home, whether it's at the beginning or at the end of the series or in the middle.
2-3-2 series. I mean, that works pretty well. And that, the reason I had those play-in games was because as the standings are right now, whether you went on points percentage or on points total, or winning percentage or on points total, points percentage, whatever way. Yeah. I'm getting my words mixed up in my head. Yeah. Lots of terminology. I apologize, but either way, it would be the top 24 no matter what. That's kind of where I took that from in some areas, because I didn't feel it was right for some of those teams that were just right at the bubble to not have a chance. But
yeah, well, I say Dems the brakes. Yeah, good luck next year.
Yeah. And that's why this is fun. There's no right answer to this, and we're just coming up with our ideas.
My answer is definitely not right, but no. Similarly, I had the same thought as you, Dan, in terms of regular season games. If you do include the regular season, everybody would have to play a set number of games. It'd have to be the same number. I don't like, unless we're jumping straight to the postseason, if we're going to have regular season games played, it needs to be to get to a certain point. And my number in my head was 73. That way, the teams that are at 71 right now, like the Golden Knights, would have a couple games to play. And then the teams that are at 68, it still wouldn't be, it'd be between 1 and 4 and 2 and 5 games, but I don't think, and obviously this is all just, pie in the sky kind of thing. I don't think that there will be any regular season games played, in my personal opinion. I think it will go straight to playoffs in whatever format it is. And I wrote mine out.
Good.
I had some notes too. They're all wrong.
Yeah, so I do not think that there will be any regular season games played, but I would propose an expanded playoff format in which the 4 teams currently in wildcard positions are in, on double underline, in. And these, mine are all based on points percentage. And then the 4 teams below them would have play-in games. I know you guys don't like the play-in games, but that's kind of what I was thinking in the expanded field. Yeah. That and then from there, I think whatever the timeline determines, because we don't know how much time there ultimately will be left in the year. Is it a best of 3? Is it a best of 5? Whatever it is. And then I agree totally with Mike that the Stanley Cup final should be a best of 7 game series. And I know that, I mean, you referenced it at the beginning of this, Darren. They plan on finishing the season in some capacity. Awarding the Stanley Cup is of the utmost importance to the league. Gary Bettman said that in his initial statement. Yeah, regarding the pause, so that's what everybody wants. And they don't want an asterisk next to it, right? They want it to be as legitimate as possible. But at the end of the day, like, we're not on a timeline that we're making up, right? We're on whatever this virus's timeline is. And so we don't know. We don't, we're looking at dates into August, but the NHL has to compete with the NBA for dates as they're coming back. And are there going to be fans in the stands? And there's so many questions and so many unknowns, but that's my idea.
Yeah, well, that's great. So I don't have that kind of handwriting, so I couldn't have done it like that. But it does lead me to 2 thoughts. And you mentioned the NBA, because there have been thoughts of, well, let's just get all the teams in the playoffs into one central location and have some kind of tournament, almost like when you were a kid and you just have a bunch of games, triple headers and things like that. And then you get everybody in the same place. I don't like that idea.
I don't either.
There's something about having a home team's fan base in a home team's arena that makes it special. And that also leads me to the other thought of playing games theoretically without fans in attendance. And
can you imagine a playoff game?
I just don't think I don't think that's right. Because, and just not to get too existential here, but I think about the community of sports, and to play these games in front of empty arenas, I think that would be psychologically damaging. I think that we want to see sports. It's not that we just watch sports for the games. The producer and director show shots of the crowd. There's a reason for that. The fans are part of it, and we know that all too well at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas.
The players feel that. The players want the fans there. That's a huge part of what we do. It's not just because you want to be on television.
And the owners like it too.
Sure. It's the whole product.
Yeah.
I was wondering, who's Dave Duberman, our director on our television broadcast on AT&T Sportsnet? Who's he going to cut to after Jonathan Marchessault scores a big goal in the stands? So here's my take on this, and then we'll have a little discussion just to wrap it up. The pause ends, and we go straight to the Stanley Cup playoffs. A 20-team field participates in a 5-stage tournament. But the first round is 4 pools of 5 teams, and it's a round robin.
Okay.
So that lets those bubble teams come in and allows a bit of a wiggle room. So 20 teams come back from the break. One team is eliminated via that round robin. That gets you to your 16 teams, and you have a tournament. But if there's a tie after the round robin, there's a one-game playoff. You can't be eliminated by a tie, just like the Memorial Cup in Canada.
I like that, Darren.
Yeah.
So
That's a creative way to get to it.
And comes in with 4 pools. The lowest seeded team out of those 4 pools is the one that plays a team that's already played. So that's the penalty, but you get in. Then you get to the 16-team tournament. Your seeding is established based on where your points were at the pause. That's it. Points percentage at the pause. And the playoff format will consist of 2 best-of-5 series in the rounds 1 and 2, and then 2 best-of-7 series for the conference final and the Stanley Cup final. And in case of seeding, when you go through, it is 1 through 3 in your division, and then 2 wildcard teams, whoever advances. So that's mine.
I like that. It's almost take a page out of college baseball. They've got the regionals, which is mini 14 round robin. Then the super regionals, there's 2 teams. Then you go to the College World Series, there's 8 and 2 14 groups. And then you go into a College World Series final where there's 2 teams. So I think that there's something in there, Darren, between your setup and something college baseball-esque.
Yeah, I like yours, Darren. I mean, if we kind of mash together all of these, we're not that far off. We all kind of want to get to 16 and then go from there.
Right.
You know, it's a matter of getting there.
If you wanted to, you could put the 4 or 5 team round robins, because you could play 2 games in one day in a non-playoff team city and go that route. And that way all fans across the 31 teams almost are exposed to hockey after the pause. So there's our playoff formats. We may have something there, who knows? But I, for one, I'm spending a little bit of time going.
Sure, important people are watching. They're going to take this as inspiration.
Well, again, and Bill Daly reiterated they want to present a Stanley Cup, and even if it takes a couple of months, that's the modus operandi right now. Is stay positive. They're optimistic. If it takes a couple of months, the Stanley Cup will be presented in 2020. There was a great poll, Dan, on the NHLPA that produced some great answers. And you came up with this idea, piggybacking off one of the questions of all the players past and present, who would you like to see play? And if you would pay. So we're asking you to get off your wallets. And the number one answer in the NHLPA poll was Wayne Gretzky. So let's, because you came up with this and thought we should talk about it, and I totally am on board. Let's start with you, Dan. Who would you pay to watch play, past or present?
Yeah, you know, I thought about this for a while because there are a number of guys who I grew up watching and probably didn't appreciate at the time. And growing up in New Jersey, of course, a Devils fan, Marty Brodeur in 1995 was different than Marty Brodeur in, say, 2010 or 2012. But I think that putting that sentimentality aside, from just a hockey standpoint, Bobby Orr, for what he was in his generation, just watching highlights and game film, seems like we took a player from the current NHL and plopped him in the NHL from 40 years ago, was doing things that nobody had done before and nobody really did after for years. So I think Bobby Orr was number 2 on that list, a great defenseman for the Boston Bruins. I think I'd have to go with Bobby Orr, but I also thought about Gordie Howe because Gordie Howe had such a long career, and I think that we think of the Gordie Howe later in his career and what he looked like because there was more video, but I would love to see Gordie Howe in the true prime early in his career.
Those are 2 great answers in Bobby Orr and Gordie Howe. What about you, Mike?
It's pretty easy. I didn't have to think very long. I would have loved to have seen and paid to see Glenn Hall play. And because he was revolutionary in goaltending, he really was the forefather of the butterfly and had some really unique ideas about the position and constantly was thinking about it. He didn't go out there by the seat of his pants. He had reasoning for a lot of stuff that he did. And I had a chance to talk to him this summer and just found him to be such an interesting person. It made me want to dive further into watching him play and the Iron Man streak of, you know, just literally hundreds and hundreds of games in a row as a goaltender, stitch him up, put him back on the ice. It's just incredible. And to flip it though, I always was fascinated with Mike Bossy as a goal scorer, because I look at the numbers he put up. His career wasn't that long, but he was utterly dominant and instrumental in winning those 4 Stanley Cups for Bill Torrey and the New York Islanders. So Glenn Hall as a goaltender, and I would toss Mike Bossy in there as well.
Stormy.
I'm boring. I agreed with the masses. Wayne Gretzky for me, greatest of all time for a reason. I'd pay to see him play for sure.
Well, that's not boring. That's just
He was
shows your age, though, because the rest of us all saw Wayne play to certain extents, and you did not. So I don't think like Bobby Orr, getting a chance to watch the game's greatest player at the position is pretty cool. Glenn Hall played every game, so you'd be able to, no matter what timeline you picked, he was on the ice. But what intrigues you about Wayne Gretzky, Stormy?
He's the GOAT, right? Like, he is everything that you want to be as a hockey player. He's reached all the records and all the milestones that everyone aspires to. And it's other than Ovi, like, who potentially could do something like that. So I just think that he's a really special guy. And granted, he was still great with the LA Kings, but I'm talking Edmonton Oilers, Wayne Gretzky. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, he was transcendent of the game. Look at the Saturday Night Live episode he did. I mean, he was unbelievable. He brought the game, truly grew the game in the United States more than it could have ever been imagined. He's one of the greatest custodians of the sport you could ever hope for.
A little surprised nobody goes with what great dynasty of the Montreal Canadiens. So there's a couple of little dynasties, but I went the Rocket Richard.
Yeah,
an opportunity to see him, just because the video, we don't have that context. And Gordie Howe, Dubes, that's a great point. We remember Gordie Howe, but remember him as a 40+ Gordie Howe. We didn't see him with the elbows and doing such amazing things with the Detroit Red Wings. So the Rocket is my guy who I could lean on. But just for the pure fact, if it was just one game, Wayne, absolutely. But to educate yourself and go down that path, the Rocket Richard. So thanks for doing this. Continued great health, good health, and do your part. I know that we're supporting our healthcare workers and first responders, as well as our teachers in a lot of cases, and we appreciate all their efforts. But this has been the Knights Report, presented by Enterprise, BGA style.